sun here, it is the abiotic factor. Why is it the abiotic factor? Because it is non-living, it doesn't have life. So this grasshopper, which is the primary consumer, will be eaten by the frog. So when a parasite is involved in a food chain, it is called as a parasitic food chain. New region or an area called that first stage of succession, nudation, right? So this is nudation. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on Environmental Studies for second semester BCom. I'm Dr. Divya, Environmental Studies faculty, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So in today's session, let us study about the Unit 2, that is ecosystems. So in today's session, let us study about the energy flow in an ecosystem. So in the previous session, we had studied that the main function of the ecosystem was to maintain the flow of energy from one trophic level to other. So exactly how the energy flows in an ecosystem, let us learn about it. So the flow of energy through living organisms in an environment is known as energy flow. So in an environment, we know that both the abiotic and the biotic factors exist, right? But energy always flow within the biotic factors, that is the living organisms. So say for example, the plants, it absorbs energy from the sunlight. So sunlight here is an abiotic factor because it is non-living, but the plant is a biotic factor because it is living. So from that particular biotic factor, that is green plants, which are the producers, from that the energy will flow to the next biotic factor, that is the consumers. From there, it will move on to the decomposers. So like that, it tends to continue. That is the flow of energy. So therefore, the flow of energy through living organisms in an environment is known as energy flow. And the energy flow in an ecosystem takes place via the food chain and the food web. So in today's session, let us learn how exactly the energy flows through a food chain and a food web. So you know the difference between a food chain and food web because we have also discussed about it in the previous session. So talking about the energy flow in an ecosystem in general, when I consider a food chain. So I've taken a simple food chain to make you understand, wherein we have the sun. As I told you, sun here, it is the abiotic factor. Why is it the abiotic factor? Because it is non-living, it doesn't have life. So the energy from the sun, it will travel to the plants, that is the producer, which forms the first trophic level. So in each trophic level, the energy tends to circulate or move in an environment or in an ecosystem. So when the herbivores feed on the green plants, energy moves from the producer into the herbivores, right? Next, the herbivores will be eaten by the small carnivorous animals. So from here, the energy will move from the herbivores, it will move into the carnivorous animals. So from the carnivores, energy, again, when the small carnivores are consumed by the secondary carnivores, that is the larger carnivores that are there in the ecosystem, the energy will move from, that is the small carnivores, to the large carnivores. Next, it will move into the decomposers. How the decomposers? Obviously, all these organisms tend to die, right? So when they die, these decomposers will start to live on them and they will decay those particular organisms. So therefore, the decomposers will start feeding on the dead organisms and it will start decaying them. At that time, the energy will move into the decomposers. So this is a simple food chain, how the energy flow occurs. So now, since you know exactly how the energy flows occurs, we shall move further to studying exactly in a food chain how the energy flow occurs and in a food web how the energy flow occurs. So talking about the food chain. So food chain, again here to see, we have the producers. So the producers, they receive energy from the sunlight. The producers are nothing but the autotrophs, which are the green plants. how do they make use of the energy? They derive energy by a process called as photosynthesis, wherein they absorb the energy from the sunlight, they make use of the carbon dioxide and water and convert it into glucose. So, energy in plants will be stored in the form of glucose. So, that energy will enter into the primary consumer here. So, consumer means those who consume something. So, here a herbivore is consuming something. So, I have taken the example of a very small consumer, that is a primary consumer here, the grasshopper. So, this grasshopper will be a herbivore. Herbivorous. So, this grasshopper, which is the primary consumer, will be eaten by the frog. Therefore, the frog will be the secondary consumer, which is a small carnivore here. It is a small carnivorous animal. Next, the secondary consumer will be eaten by the tertiary consumer, which is a large carnivore, as I can say. It is a large carnivores. Now, these large carnivores will be eaten by the hawk or the eagle, right? They will form the quaternary consumer, or we can call it as a final consumer, or we can call it as the quaternary consumer. So, here this quaternary consumer is usually a omnivore. Why it is a omnivore? Because this quaternary consumer, it can also act as a secondary consumer, right? Why? It can even feed on the grasshopper and it can even feed on the frog as well. Now, if I draw it like this, it will be called a food web. So, I want you to understand the difference between a food chain and a food web. Food chain means simple, in one stretch we will draw the diagram wherein one organism will be eating the other. But here now we all know that the hawk, it will also feed on the producers. It will also eat fruits, right? It will also eat fruits. It will also eat the insects. It will also eat the other carnivores, and it will also eat the tertiary consumer. So now all these are eaten by the hawk. Now a web is being formed here. So that is food web. So that is the difference between a food chain and a food web. So here, since I am talking about a food web, I will not consider the hawk eating the producer, the grasshopper and the secondary consumer. But I will only move in one particular direction, that is in a clockwise direction, wherein the producer will be eaten by the primary consumer by the secondary consumer by the tertiary, and the tertiary by the quaternary. That is the hawk which I have taken as an example. Now, here also again the hawk will die, right? So, when the hawk dies, what happens? They will end up in the soil, right? So, every dead organism will end up in the soil. So, on this, the final consumer, that is the decomposers, will start growing. Now, these decomposers will start feeding on the dead eagle that is there, or dead hawk that is there. So, therefore, energy will move here. So, this is how the food chain will form. So, next here, as I am telling you, the energy is moving from an abiotic factor into a biotic factor. So, the energy now is in the plant in the form of glucose. That energy will move into the grasshopper. Next, the energy will move into the frog when it feeds on the grasshopper. Next, it will move into the snake when the snake feeds on the grasshopper. Next, to the hawk. So, like this, the flow of energy is occurring from one organism to another in different trophic levels here. So, this is how energy flows in an ecosystem in a simple food chain. So, now here I want you to know that now I have drawn different arrow marks here. That will be a food web. Similarly, here also, these will also die. So, the decomposers, it will add on to the decomposers. These will also die. This will also die. Even the plant will also die. Now, can you see how many arrow marks I have put? So, therefore, it will become a food web. So, that is the difference between a food chain and a food web. So, this is a simple food chain where the energy flows. Next, food chains, they are usually of three types, that is grazing food chain, parasitic food chain and detritus or saprophytic food chain. So, let's study about each of these, taking an example how energy flows in each of these food chains. So, grazing food chains means usually they are found in the grasslands, wherein here we have the producer, that is the green plant. The producer will be eaten by the consumer, wherein the energy will flow from the producer to the consumer. Next, the consumer, which is a herbivore. Herbivorous animal, it will be eaten by the carnivorous animal. That is the primary carnivorous animal. This primary carnivorous animal, into this also energy will flow now. So this primary carnivorous animal will pass on the energy to the secondary carnivorous, which is a snake here. Secondary carnivorous because the snake will feed on the frog. Now the frog will be eaten by the owl. So this is a simple grazing food chain that I have taken as an example. So in a simple grazing food chain, the energy flows like this systematic manner from one organism to other in the trophic level. Now the same thing we have represented here in different trophic level. So what did we take? Grass. Say for example, usually energy, the SI unit of energy or the measurement of energy. So how we measure the length? We take centimeters, meters, kilometers and all that, right? To measure the length. Just like that, to measure energy, we consider kilocalories. It is kilocalories. Kilocalories. So it is represented in kilocalories, that is K-cal. So say for example, this is the grass. Grass is the producer here, right? So grass, by taking the energy of the sunlight, in the grass there will be, say for example, 1000 kilocalories of energy. Now the grasshopper will eat the grass. So the energy will transfer to the grasshopper. How much? Say for example, again here. So here it is 10,000 kilocalories. Here it is 1000 kilocalories will be transported to the grasshopper. From the grasshopper, the energy will move into the frog, that is 100 kilocalories, and to the snake, that is 10 kilocalories. From the snake to the hawk, 1 kilocalorie. Now you can have a doubt here. Why didn't 10,000 kilocalories of energy itself, why it didn't go into each of these organisms? Why? Because the grasshopper will not completely consume these grasses, right? So a part of the grass is consumed, wherein little bit of energy it will receive and little bit of energy is given back to the environment. The grasshopper, it will digest the food and it will excrete the food, right? So when it excretes, a part of the energy will be released back to the environment. So it will be lost back. So that is how in each trophic level, the energy that is going from one trophic level to the other, the energy rate will, or the amount of energy tends to decrease. So this is the trophic level that is shown here. So trophic levels are represented in the form of a pyramid like structure like this, and food chain is represented like this, a simple food chain. So this is a upright pyramid, ecological. We call it as the ecological pyramid. So this is an upright pyramid. Why it is upright is because the producers are more in number. The grasshoppers are lesser than the producers. The frogs are even more lesser than the grasshoppers. Next, the snakes are lesser than the frog. Their population is lesser. So that is why, and not just that, as and when the energy moves from the lowest to the highest trophic level, the energy amount decreases. So that is why it is represented in a triangular or pyramid shape. So this is why it is called, that is why it is called as an ecological pyramid, and this is how depicted. So next, moving to the parasitic food chain. So parasites, what are parasites? So we have inside the human body also we have different parasites. We have tapeworm, the roundworm, all that, the lice that is there on the head, all those are the parasites, right? Because they feed on the human body, or they feed on the nutrients that the humans consume. So even like that, in animals also parasites are present. So when a parasite is involved in a food chain, it is called as a parasitic food chain. Say for example, we have dead leaves. So these dead leaves are eaten by the woodlouse. So this woodlouse is a parasite. Next, this woodlouse will be eaten by the consumer. So this is also a consumer. It is a primary consumer. Next, the bird is the secondary consumer. So energy from the dead leaves is moving into the woodlouse, and from the woodlouse, the energy will move into the bird. So the bird, inside the bird, the woodlouse will reside, and therefore, because the woodlouse is a parasite, it is called as a parasitic food chain. There, the grasshopper, it usually feeds on the grasses. Therefore, a simple grazing food chain was shown there. Here, a parasitic food chain wherein a parasite is involved, that is a woodlouse is inward. So the woodlouse will be eaten by the black bird. Therefore, the black bird will derive energy from the woodlouse. Same thing can be represented in the ecological pyramid as well. Say for example, here we have the producers, which are the green plants. They are the autotrophs. So from here, the energy will move into the herbivores, which are the birds. So birds, they feed on these grass plants. That is, they depend on the fruits and flowers for their food. These herbivores will be eaten by the parasites. That is, when they die and decay, they will be eaten by the parasites, or in their intestinal part or inside their body, the parasites will be residing or will be present, wherein they are feeding on the birds. So the energy will move to the parasites from the birds. Here, from the green plants into the birds, that is the herbivores. From the herbivores, it will move into the parasites. Next, from the parasites, it will move to the hyperparasites. Those are the organisms which feed on the parasites. So here also energy is moving. Now you can ask me, why is this pyramid ulta? This is called as a downright pyramid. Earlier one that we showed was an upright pyramid. This is a downright pyramid. Why? Because here green plants, more than the number of green plants that are there, the consumers, that is birds, are there. Population number I am talking about, it is more. Here the number of parasite population is more than the number of the bird population. Here the hyperparasite population, say for example the microorganisms, they are billions together of microorganisms that are present, right? So number of hyperparasites population is more than the parasite. So that is why, based on the population here, the pyramid is downright. It is not standing upright like a normal ecological pyramid. So that is the difference between the two types of ecological pyramid, wherein based on the number of population in a particular area, geographical area, the pyramid is set here. But energy will always from the lower trophic level to the higher trophic level. Don't think the energy will flow ulta here because it is a downright pyramid, but the energy will always flow from a higher trophic level, that is from the green plants, then towards the consumer. So that this is about the parasitic food chain, how energy flows in a parasitic food chain. Next, talking about the detritus or the saprophytic food chain. So here there is a good example that is taken for detritus food chain, wherein there is the presence of organic matter. So say for example, so here there is presence of organic matter. How did this organic matter come? Organic matter, obviously the dead leaves of the trees and all that, that will mix with the nutrients of the soil and it will form a organic matter in the soil. So these organic matter that is there in the soil, it will be eaten by the earthworm. So energy will pass from the organic matter to the earthworm, right? So it will pass to the earthworm. This earthworm will be eaten by the chicken. It will be eaten by the chicken. So therefore, the chicken will receive the energy from the earthworm and the chicken will be eaten by the man. So man will receive energy from the chicken. Now, man will die and decompose, again adding on to the nutrients of the soil. So, this is about detritus food chain, wherein the saprophytes are involved. So, the saprophytes are working on this particular organic matter, wherein they are decaying and decomposing the organic matter. And not just that, this earthworm is called as the detritus here. Why it is called as the detritus is because this earthworm will feed on the organic matter, breaking down the organic matter into very smaller bits and therefore making the soil even more richer. So that is why earthworms are called as detritus. They are detrivores or they are detritus, and hence it is called as a detritus food chain, where either a saprophyte or any other earthworm or an insect is feeding on the organic matter to gain energy and therefore in turn increasing the fertility of the soil, and the earthworm gets eaten by the chicken by the man. So any example you can take, I have taken a simple example here. So this is how energy moves. So energy, when it reaches the man, it will be very, very minimal here. So this is about a simple detritus or a saprophytic food chain. Next, talking about food web, how exactly the energy flows in a food web. So food web is made up of multiple interconnected chains, as I showed you in the previous slide. How a simple food chain, I drew different arrow marks, right? Saying that this particular organism can feed on this one, this different organisms, forming a food web. So here in an ecosystem, a food web represents all the possible ways the energy can flow in different pathways, and this flow of energy in different pathways is also very, very important for the functioning of the ecosystem in a balanced manner. So in one of the intermediate food, so any one of the intermediate food chain is removed here, then one connection is lost. Say for example, there is a shirt button, right? So you have a shirt button wherein all the buttons from the top to the bottom you'll have to put. Any one button is not there lost, then the shirt will open up. So that is why, that is the same way here also. Something happens to any one organism in the food web, then all the other organisms tend to get affected. So that is why food web, or the maintenance of different species of organism in a food web, is very, very important to have a balanced ecosystem. So most species in an ecosystem have more than one food source, and that is nothing but it is the food web, and this actually boosts the chances of survival. So in a food chain, what happens here is the energy flows in only one direction, that is clockwise, from one organism to the other, from the other to the other, like that, right? So in between any one organism is lost, then it is very difficult because the food chain will get altered. But that doesn't happen in the food web most of the time. Why? Because if one organism is lost, then the consumer will have the opportunity to feed on another organism. Say for example, here I've taken a simple picture wherein we have the grasses, which are the producers. So these grasses will be eaten by the primary consumer. So the primary consumer. So the primary consumer here is the herbivore, grasshopper, right? And the grass is also eaten by the mouse, if you can see here. And the grass is also eaten by the rabbit. Did we take all these examples all together in a food chain? No, in a simple food chain, what did we take? Grasses by the grasshopper, grasshopper will be eaten by the bird, bird by the snake, snake by the hawk, finish. That was a food chain. But in a food web, you can see there are different organisms depending on one producer here, that is the grasses. Now, this grasshopper will be eaten by the frog. Frog will be eaten by the owl. Again here, the mouse will be eaten by the owl. The mouse is also eaten by the hawk. The mouse is also eaten by the fox. The rabbit is also eaten by the fox. The rabbit is also eaten by the hawk. So like that, each of these are interconnected. Now, say for example, this frog is not there. Frog completely got extinct from our planet. Now, do you think the food web will get affected? Of course, it might get affected, but not that extent when compared to the food chain. Why here? Say for example, because the owl has one more option. It can eat the grasshopper, right? And it can also eat the rat. So what if frog is not there? So that is how. So therefore, food web, any imbalance in the food web will not affect the ecosystem to a greater extent when compared to that of imbalance in the food chain. So here, energy from one particular organism, from one trophic level, is moving to different organisms in different trophic levels or in the same trophic level. So this is about the food web. So energy is moving from the grasses to the grasshopper, from the grasshopper to the frog, from the frog to the owl, and again from the mouse will derive energy from the grass, again the owl will derive energy from the mouse. So the owl is getting energy both from the frog as well as the mouse, right? And even the fox here, fox is getting energy from the rabbit as well as the mouse, and fox can also get energy from the hawk. So that is how each one is interdependent here. So they receive energy from different food sources in the environment or different trophic levels in the environment. So this is how energy flows in a simple food web. So moving further, let us study about the definition of ecological succession. So in this session, let us discuss about one more topic, that is ecological succession. So what is this ecological succession? So ecological succession, I have taken 4 definitions here, whichever is easy that can be used. So ecological succession is nothing but it is the process in which the mix of species and habitat in an area change over time. Say for example, you're traveling somewhere, you might have seen a pond. Again, travel to the same area after 10 years, that pond would have been converted into a semi-land area, right? So that is nothing but a change. What ecosystem was there? It was a pond ecosystem. That pond ecosystem, over a period of time, it got converted into a land ecosystem or a terrestrial ecosystem. So that is nothing but ecological succession. Any change that occur because of the mix of species and habitat in an area, they change over time. That is nothing but ecological succession. Or we can also say, so here, say for example, gradually these communities replace one another until a climax community like a mature forest is reached, or until a disturbance like a fire occurs. So here changes can occur, right? Why changes can occur? Sometimes what happens, it will be just a pond, but over a period of time it will get converted into a land, and wherein the forest will start to grow. That is ecological succession. Or sometimes what happens, that forest again, because of fire or something, that forest get burns down and it will get converted into a grassland. That is ecological succession. So any change occurring in the ecosystem related to its species or related to its particular habitat over a period of time, it is called as ecological succession. So ecological succession is also, it can be defined as the process by which the structure of a biological community evolves over time. So what type of biological community? Aquatic community can become a terrestrial community. A terrestrial one can be, or a forest community. A forest community can become a grassland community. So that is how it tends to change over time. One more definition for that: ecological succession is the steady and gradual change. It is a slow and a gradual change in species of a given area with respect to the changes in the environment. So sometimes because of the changes in the environment also, ecological succession can occur. Say for example, sometimes a well fertile land with lot of plants can get converted into a desert land. So that is also ecological succession. So anything, earlier it was some kind of habitat, it got converted into a different kind of habitat in the environment. So all this is ecological succession. So let's study about the stages of ecological succession. The ecological succession, how exactly it occurs, what are the different steps involved in ecological succession. So it is studied usually in 5 stages. One is nudation, the next is invasion, then comes competition and coaction, then comes reaction, and then comes stabilization, which is the climax community. Climax, how movies have a climax, right? Means the end of the movie. Like that, here also ecological succession will have an end. It will come to a stop. After that, it will not change. That is a climax community. So here this is nudation. So this is nudation. Then after nudation, we have invasion. So in invasion, if you can see nudation means nothing is growing in that area. Later on, some plants will start to invade there. The lower plants will start to invade. That is invasion. So invasion will continue till then. Then other plants will start to come here. Then we'll have competition. Competition will start between the plants. After that, some reaction might occur. Reaction. If in between, because of human intervention, because of deforestation, because of forest fire, there will be a change again in between in the ecological succession. That is nothing but the reaction that occurs. Next is climax. Climax, can you see here, wherein tall trees, shrubs, herbs, everything is developed and it has become a complete forest now. The climax has reached. That is a climax community, or it is a stabilization wherein no further the change or ecological succession will occur. So each of these we shall study one by one. So talking about nudation. So it is a process of developing a bare area without any form of life for the arrival of new species. Say for example here, I've taken the picture of a hill wherein the landslide has occurred. Now here and all, is it nude? Is it empty? No, right? It is filled with trees. But here if you can see where the landslide has occurred, no trees are there. Now this is a bare area, right? It is a nude area, it is a bare area. Now in this particular area, the new plants has to develop. That is, invasion of plants has to occur. So this is nudation. You have understood what nudation? There nothing would be there. Say for example, I'll take an empty rock. What is there on the rock? Nothing. It is a big stone. It is a big boulder. Now from somewhere a lichen or a moss will start growing on that, right? So that particular bare rock is called as that particular process is or stage is the nudation. So nudation is the first stage. So after nudation, it is the invasion stage. So in invasion stage, what happens? Successful establishment of a species on a bare area is called as invasion. So in a bare area, as I told you, what will happen? A plant will develop. Say for example, I've taken the example of lichen here. Lichens, you have seen them growing on trees and all that. They are called as the pollution indicators, because wherever pollution is there, lichens will not grow, and therefore it will depict how polluted a city is. So you can see even in Mysuru and all, when you go around on the trees, you can see white patches like this. They are nothing but the lichens. So the tree, for example, or the rock, on the rocks also you can find them. So a rock was bare, nothing was there on the rock, not even a small tiny plant was there. Next, invasion will occur. What is it being invaded by? It is being invaded by a grass or a plant or a lichen or a moss, right? So here I have taken the example of a lichen. So that is invasion. So here invasion again is of 3 steps. It is studied under 3 successive steps. So this ecological succession, then usually it will come for 10 marks. So usually this is a 10-mark question. So you'll have to write lots under this. So explain the different stages with proper side headings so that easy marks can be fetched in the exam. And also about food web, food chain and all that, you have 4 marks, wherein 3 questions will come for 4 marks. So there also there is possibility of asking these questions. And the definitions and all that usually will come for 1 mark. So that is how you need to concentrate, split and study for your exam. So talking about the second stage, invasion, as I told you, it is of 3 important steps are there under invasion. First is migration or dispersal. So here something has to grow on this bare rock, right? What do you mean by invasion? There is a country, some outsider is coming and declaring war in that particular country. He is invading the country, right? Just like that, consider a bare rock here. This bare rock is a country. From somewhere something is coming and occupying this particular bare rock. It is invading the bare rock. So for invasion, first migration should be there. Somebody, say for example, when I'm talking about a country, somebody from one country should come into one country, right? Should migrate into one country if it has to get invaded. Just like that, here also, what is this migration under this? So here, the seed should migrate. Either the seed should come and fall on the bare rock, or either the spore should come and fall on the bare rock. So, or any other propagules, that is ones that are capable of germinating, any other propagule should come and fall on the bare rock. So now when they migrate on the bare rock, that is the first process. So how will can they walk? Do they have legs to move? So how will they migrate? How will they get dispersed? They get dispersed by agents like air, water, etc. So when the air is blowing, that air would have carried one seed and it would have deposited the seed on the rock. That seed will start to grow there. Now first step is migration, right? Like how do we migrate to different countries? We migrate to different countries by through an aeroplane, right? Just like that here, the seed migrates onto the rock by taking the help of wind or water. So that is about migration. Now the seed has migrated. Next is ecosis or establishment. So the process of successful establishment, that is the germination and growth of the seed. As I told you, migration of the seed has occurred. It has settled on the rock, bare rock now. That seed has to germinate and grow. That particular process is called as ecosis or establishment. So growth of the species in a new area will occur as a result of adjustment with whatever prevailing environmental conditions are there. That particular process is known as ecosis. Now after ecosis, aggregation should occur. One plant will get formed. From that one plant, the same plant cannot spread on that rock. That is aggregation, means groups of plants will start to develop on the rock. So after ecosis, the individual species of plant will increase their number, or they will multiply by reproduction, and they will start to aggregate or form groups in a particular area. So what are the three stages under invasion? We have migration, wherein the seeds migrated and came and fell on the rock. Then we have establishment, ecosis, wherein the particular seed germinated and developed into a plant. Now that plant, next is aggregation step, wherein that plant will again reproduce to produce multiple number of plants there. These are the three steps of invasion. Now that bare rock that was there got invaded by the plants. So that was invasion. Next, after invasion, competition and coaction is the next stage in ecological succession. So, competition and coaction. So, as the species aggregate, as they tend to form group on the bare rock at a limited space, there happens competition, mainly for space and nutrition. Now, say for example, the rock is so small, right? So, when it is so small, or imagine a rock that is of this size, from somewhere the seed migrated and fell on the rock. Now the seed germinated and it formed a plant. Now one plant is there, right? That plant will reproduce and it will form many number of plants on that rock. Now when many number of plants are there on the rock, won't competition exist? It is just like how the population of a country is increasing and there is competition for job. You go for a job, earlier less competition because less number of students would have graduated. But now more competition because more number of students are there, more number of graduations are there. So that is why. So there is competition between the job seekers. Just like that here also, in this small space, when many number of plants starts to develop, there will be competition between the plants for nutrition, for space and all that. So that is nothing but competition and coaction. That is the next step. So secondly, the life process of one individual is affected by the surrounding species in various ways, which is known as coaction. So this competition, again here, you're going for a job. There is many competitors for you for that job. In that, will everybody get the job? No. Those who are capable, those who are fit will get the job, right? Others will be rejected. Just like that here also, after competition, that is many plants are growing, they will be competing for space. Those plants which are fit and capable of competing very well, they will survive and the others will get perished there. So that is coaction. So the species which are found unable to compete with others will get discarded or will get eliminated from the environment, just like how a person will get eliminated from a job when there is lots of competition or when there is lot of eligible person than him. So that is the same thing happens in environment as well. So this is about competition. So here I have taken the example of a small pond wherein lots of hippopotamus are there. Can you see there is no proper space also for the hippopotamus to move around because large number of hippopotamus are there and there is no enough space for them. So this is competition and coaction will start. They'll start to fight with each other. In the fight, one might die or get injured and later die. So all that will occur. So this is nothing but competition and coaction occurring. So this is the third stage in the ecological succession. Next, fourth stage is reaction. So the species present in an environment, they tend to constantly interact with one another, causing modification. That is true, right? Are we the only ones living in the planet? No. There are different thousands together of plant species, thousands together of animal species, and always we interact with the plant and then animal species in nature, right? So therefore, this interaction with different species in an environment or an ecosystem brings some modification in the ecosystem. That modification is nothing but reaction. So the mechanism of modification of the environment through the influence of living organisms, it is known as reaction. So reaction usually brings about a change or it induces a change in the soil composition, it induces a change in the water content and also the light organism on it, and this is also known as reaction. So any change that occurs because of interaction between different organisms in an environment or an ecosystem is called as reaction. And due to this reaction or due to this drastic modification of the environment, it may not be suitable for the existing community. Say for example, earlier I had shown you a picture wherein the pond was filled with hippopotamus, right? Now earlier in that pond, the fishes were living very happily because very less number of hippopotamus was there. But now the hippopotamus number has increased to so much extent that it is becoming a problem for the fishes to live there. Actually, the ponds belong to the fishes first, but the hippopotamus occupied them. So that is how now the fish population will start to reduce. Why? The hippopotamus will start to make the pond quite filthy. Therefore, the fish population will start to reduce. So that is how the modification in the environment will actually tend to decrease the survival rate of the actually existing species there. So hence the existing community may be replaced by an other community. So that is about the reaction here. So say for example, here I have taken the pond. So in a pond, you can see how many numbers of lotus are there, right? These lotuses, as and when the years increase, they will increase in number. And when they die and decay, what will happen? They'll add on to the sediment or the soil content in the pond or the lake. Now, when soil gets added, what happens? Grasses will start to grow. When grasses start to grow, the shrubs will start to grow. The herbs will start to grow. And finally, this tree will start to grow. Therefore, the complete pond will get converted into a land. So, that is how it occurs. So, this is about the reaction. So, now the pond got completely modified into a terrestrial ecosystem. So, this is a reaction stage in an ecological succession. Next, talking about the last stage, that is stabilization or climax. So, stabilization or climax is the final or the last or the terminal community stage, and it is established for a longer period of time and which can maintain an equilibrium with the environment of that particular area. Why? Because once a climax is reached wherein a complete forest has been formed, now no changes will occur because it has become stabilized. So it is a permanent environment. No changes will occur there unless a forest fire occurs or unless because of human intervention. Otherwise, no changes will occur. Therefore, it is a stabilizing community or a stable community or a climax community. So, this community is known as climax community and the stage is called as the climax stage. So, this is the last stage. Now, because you know about these 5 stages, it will be easy for you to study the 2 types of successions, ecological succession, that is primary succession and secondary succession. So, make a note, this is one of the questions that can appear for 10 marks in the exam. So, next let's study about the types of ecological succession. So, usually there were 2 types of ecological succession, but apart from that there are also 2 more that is added. So, we have primary succession, secondary succession, autogenic and allogenic succession, and one more is autotrophic and heterotrophic succession. So, let's study about each of these one by one. Primary succession. So, here I'll not keep explaining again and again what is coaction, what is reaction, what is climax community and all that, because I've already told you in the previous slide. So, when I use the term invasion, you must understand what I'm talking about. So, different stages, I'll just use the terms there so you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, primary refers to first formed. So, primary means they are the pioneers, that is the first form. So, primary refers to the first form, that is the succession can occur in a new region or a area. What is that? New region or a area called that first stage of succession, nudation, right? So, this is nudation, which has not been previously inhabited by any of the organisms. Say for example, a barren rock, a barren sand dune and areas where lava has flown. So, all there lava, that is when volcanoes erupt and the lava flows, right? That molten hot lava that is there, it will completely destroy the plant community and it will make that area rocky. It will get filled with lava rocks, right? There no plants will grow. So, that is a barren area. So, first primary succession means the land was completely bare. Nothing was there on that. Nothing, no plant, not even a single small grass, nothing was there. It was only complete bare area. Now, on that bare area, if one plant grows on it, it will be a primary succession because on these pioneer or first form species develop such as mosses or lichens. And these mosses or lichens Next, how in primary succession, the further stages of succession will occur. So, development of mosses or lichens means it will be which stage? It is nothing but the invasion stage, right? Invasion stage. Next, after invasion stage, what will happen? We'll have coaction and reaction. So, in coaction and reaction, when they that is in invasion itself, we have different stages, right? That is migration, then we have aggregation and all that. Now these, when they die and decay, they form soil on the bare area. Now when soil is available, again other plant species will get added there because the nutrient of that area will increase. Other plant species will get added. So this is how primary succession gets established. So see here, if you can see here, we have the formation of the pioneer species. So here first it was bare rock. On the bare rock, what got formed? The pioneer species, that is the lichens. Then now these lichens will die and decay. When they die and decay, they'll add on to the nutrient content to the soil. Then what will get formed? Small annual plants will get formed. Now in that bare area, the area which was bare, lichens developed. After lichens, now to that got included small plants. Next, grasses and some shrubs and herbs will develop. Next, again grasses, shrubs and trees and all that will develop. Next, again large trees along with lichens, grasses, shrubs, mosses, everything will develop, reaching to a climax community. So this is how primary succession occurs. Always remember, primary succession means it starts on a bare area where nothing at all was there growing. So that is primary succession. You'll understand even better when I explain secondary succession, because when you know the difference, you'll come to know about it. So this is about primary succession. So here the wind of flowing water or birds. Again here what will happen in primary succession? First invasion, right? After invasion means the seeds and all should be carried. So the birds will carry the seeds and all that, or the wind or air, water can carry the seeds and all that, and it will deposit on the bare area, leading to the growth of plants and trees. And eventually when these plants and trees die, they increase the fertility of the soil, and therefore new organisms or new plants and species will further get added, leading to a formation of a climax community having different varieties of organisms. Climax community is formed, all different plant, animals and bird species and all that will come and settle there. That is how a climax community gets formed. So this is about primary succession. I'm going fast. Why? Because I've already explained to you in detail the different stages of ecological succession. So since you know the stages, it is easy for you to understand what is primary succession, what happens in primary succession and all that. Next is secondary succession. So secondary succession means already something was there. Say for example, a forest was there. Now that forest caught fire and it completely got destroyed and it became a bare area. Now it is a secondary succession. Why? Already the plants were there, but because of some reason the plants got destroyed, and again the plants will start to develop there. Now you understood, right, what is primary succession and secondary succession, the difference. So secondary succession occurs in areas that were already inhabited by plants. Say for example, agricultural fields, or areas that were destroyed, or it was destroyed because of storms, because of floods, because of volcanic eruption, because of forest fire, etc., or because of deforestation, and anything, any area which was disturbed. Say for example, Bandipur, a part of Bandipur got burnt completely, right? And later on, after few months, again it got rejuvenated, again trees started to grow there. That is secondary succession. Now say for example, we'll take Kushal Nagar area, wherein in that particular area there was nothing growing. It was a bare area, barren area, which was given to the government by the Tibetan refugees. But now the Tibetan refugees have grown all types of crops there, trees there. It is a primary succession. Why? Because earlier nothing was there. But Bandipur forest example is a secondary succession, because already forest was there, it got burnt and completely destroyed because of forest fire, and again it got rejuvenated. So that is secondary succession. So unlike primary succession that occurs on bare rocks, secondary succession occurs on already existing soil. So primary succession will take place on bare rocks where even soil also was not there. Secondary succession will develop on soil itself. So earlier itself soil was there, on that it will develop. So that is the difference between the primary and the secondary succession. So you can see here already the forest was there, but it got destroyed because of fire, and soil is also here there. Now it became a bare area, right? This area is bare. To this the species will come, that is the first plants will come, then again the other plants will start to form, then again other plants will start to develop, and finally it will form a climax community. So that is what happens in secondary succession. Already the forest was there, but it got burned down. So that is, and it made the area bare. So that is secondary succession. So this was about secondary succession. So here first small fast growing plants and weeds will be the pioneers of secondary succession. There in the primary succession, mosses and lichens will be the pioneer. And these small species, again they will get dominated by taller plants, then trees will start growing, and this is how a complete mature forest will be formed, which is a mature community, that is a climax community will get formed. So this is about secondary succession. All the other processes same. Only difference is first primary succession will be formed on a bare rock. Secondary succession will be formed on area which got destroyed, but already species had existed there. So that is the only difference. But other things, the stages and all that are there, all that are same under both the succession. Next, talking about autogenic and allogenic succession. So autogenic succession is the ecological succession which is caused because of biotic elements. So biotic elements means because of living elements in that specific community. And allogenic succession is the ecological succession that is influenced by abiotic, that is non-living community. And in autogenic succession, biotic variables like vegetation and organic matter get collected in the soil, affect the ecological community, whereas in allogenic succession, the non-living things such as the volcanoes, flooding, forest fire, global warming, etc. modify the ecological succession. So always we need to remember, any succession if it occurs because of the living organisms, it is called as autogenic succession. And if any succession occurs, ecological succession occurs because of the non-living organisms, such as because of forest fire, because of volcano eruption and all that, it is called as autogenic succession. So secondary succession always begins with autogenic succession, right? It begins with the living organisms. Why? Because first the trees were there, they got burnt. So forest fire is allogenic. So first trees were there, that is autogenic. Forest fire is allogenic. So first trees were there, it got burnt by the forest fire, and then the other species start to develop there. So that is secondary succession, therefore always begins with autogenic succession, and primary succession always begins with allogenic succession. Why? Because primary succession occurs on rock. Rock is a non-living thing, right? So that is why. Then the autogenic succession will take place. So first allogenic succession and then autogenic succession in the case of primary succession. First autogenic succession and then allogenic succession in the case of secondary succession. So this is about autogenic and allogenic succession. Next, talking about autotrophic and heterotrophic succession. So autotrophic succession refers to succession in which the green plants are abundant, because green plants are the autotrophs, right? They are called as the autotrophs, which are capable of synthesizing their own food. So if the succession occurs by the green plants, it is called as autotrophic succession. And heterotrophic succession means if the succession occurs by the heterotrophs, that is the organisms that feed on the green plants, that is the herbivorous animals. And in the area that exists in the middle of the vast continent, the succession would occur more quickly. And this is because all the pollen grains or seeds of plants from various seers would reach this location much faster. They would establish and eventually result in a climax community. So always the first succession, the succession is autotrophic in nature. Then it becomes heterotrophic because first the herbivorous cannot get formed. Why? Because the herbivorous need plants to survive. So that is why first plants need to get formed. First autotrophic succession should occur. Then the heterotrophic succession should occur. So that is how that particular succession is called as autotrophic and heterotrophic succession. So these are the different types of succession, among which primary succession and secondary succession are the two important ones that you need to remember. So this was about this particular session. In the next coming session, let us case studies of the following ecosystem. So understand these following ecosystem and the contribution of different people towards the ecosystem by taking few case studies, wherein we'll consider the case studies of forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, desert ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem, under which we will study pond ecosystem, lake ecosystem and different ones. So this we shall learn in the coming session. So we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.